Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. We're out here in the garden on this hot, sticky July afternoon to talk about succession planting, or succession sowing as it's sometimes called. This is an important strategy when it comes to maximizing harvest and maximizing your garden space, especially if you have a smaller space like I do, not really as much space to work with compared to the amount of plants that you want to grow. We're going to take a walk through the garden today, and I'm going to show you some spaces that are either open and need to be replanted or places that will be opening soon. I'm going to talk a little bit about my succession planting strategy for this year. So here in Connecticut, we are just getting into the peak gardening season for the most part. But there's some crops that are kind of on the way out. For example, I have this garlic here. Here on this side, I did have my elephant garlic, which is done now. And this regular hardneck garlic is going to be coming out really soon, and I'm going to, I'm not going to let this bed sit empty. I do have a pumpkin here, and this is the hope is that as the garlic comes out, this will start to take over the space, but I have some other plans for this bed as well. When it comes to being successful with succession planting, timing is really important and having a strategy. This garlic here is going to come out in probably about a week or so. And I do plan to use this same bed again to replant garlic in the fall. So usually around the end of October, early November, I will replant my garlic, and that will overwinter here and be ready to harvest next summer. But there are going to be several months where this bed would be sitting empty if I just waited to plant my garlic. So what I want to plant here is something that will grow in the amount of time that this bed will be empty, something that will be done when it's time to plant garlic. So I don't want to plant something that's going to be a fall crop that's going to go into the fall and winter here. I want something that, will be done quickly by the first frost. So I did mention the pumpkin. Back here, I tried planting some cantaloupes. I tried several times and they just weren't taking. So we're going to move on and try a different strategy. So in this bed, I'm going to be planting some more conventional succession sown plants like bush beans and zucchinis, things that have a really quick maturity date here. But I'm also going to do something a little bit unconventional as well. I did just post a video a few days ago talking about seeds that you can still plant in the vegetable garden in July. You might want to take a look at that video too, because a lot of that information is going to kind of work together with the information in this video. So I'll link that video below. But in that video, I did talk about plants that, that would be good candidates to go in this garlic bed here, plants that would be done by the first fall frost. And I am going to be planting some of those, like I mentioned, the bush beans, the zucchini. But I also have some tomato suckers that I have on my deck. I clipped off my tomato plants, and those are rooting. And I actually should check on them because I think they probably do have roots by now. So probably the next video that I post is going to be talking about that in more depth. And along the back of the bed there, and additionally, along the side of the bed where the elephant garlic was, I'm going to be planting those rooted tomato suckers. Planting tomato suckers like that is a great option to get a second harvest of tomatoes if your season is too short to start tomatoes from seed. Gives you a little bit of a boost. But, in that video, I'll talk a little more in detail about that. So let's talk about some other areas in the garden that I'm planning to succession plant. Now here on this trellis, you can see my peas. These are really on the way out. Peas don't like summer heat. And you can see they're starting to get a little crispy, they're fading. These are pretty much done. Now this one I have actually already succession planted. You'll see this is going to need a little bit of direction, trying to climb the tomato cage when I want it to climb the trellis. But I have planted some small fruited pumpkins along this trellis here. I did actually plant these a couple weeks ago, and the idea was that they were fairly small when I planted them, knowing that once these peas come out, it would now be time for these pumpkins to be getting big enough to grow up the trellis. So you can see, a little harder to see in there, but I have pumpkins on both sides of this trellis. So this was an example of succession planting that I've already done. I already started while the peas were still here because these started off very small. At some point I will be planting a second planting of peas to get a fall harvest of peas, but it won't be in the same area. That'll be somewhere else in my garden. So over here you can see my sprouting broccoli. This is pretty much done. You can see we're still getting little bits of harvest here and there, but it's definitely petering out now, and it's time to replace this with something else. So I've got sprouting broccoli here. You can see it's fully flowering. I had some lettuce that planted in between. You can see this is bolted. So these are cool weather crops that are done. I'm going to be pulling these out and replacing these. I haven't decided for 100% what is going to go here yet. So I did mention in the garlic bed that I'm planning on replanting garlic there in the fall. So I want something fairly quick maturing there that will be done, after the first frost. Here, that may not be as much of a consideration. So what I may end up doing here is when I pull this out, I may end up planting this area with some cool weather plants that I expect to live on past the frost. I do have a few other areas in my garden that I'll show you as well, where I have cool weather plants growing, and I think what I might do is as I pull them out, I might gradually replace them with other cool weather plants to be my fall garden. Here in my struggling asparagus patch, I decided to make the most of some bare soil and plant some zucchinis here. So I'll probably thin these out to 2 zucchinis. I do like to let 2 grow together because I find I get better pollination that way. But in several places on this bed, I did plant some zucchinis. Zucchini and other summer squash is a great option when it comes to succession sowing, succession planting, because it has such a quick maturity date. Now, this is not frost tolerant at all. As soon as we get a frost, these plants will be killed. But because it matures so quickly, I should get a harvest well before my frost date. So I do have some more mature zucchini plants over in my main garden. And this is basically, these little ones here are for the purpose of replacing those when those are kind of on their way out. So over in the main garden here, you can see I have these zucchini plants here. And then a little farther down the walkway, I have these even larger ones here. These, you can see these are starting to flower. These will be yielding really soon, but I have those other zucchini plants started to replace them as soon as these kind of die back. So let's head back here a little ways. This was my lettuce patch, and you can see I pulled out I still have a little bit of arugula here, but I pulled out most of the arugula, some Asian greens that had bolted. But you can see all my lettuce that's in here, this has bolted as well. And it's time to replace this with something else. So in this little bare patch here, I pulled out those bolted greens that I mentioned, and I did replant some lettuce seeds. So you can see a few of them have germinated, not a real lot. That is probably partly because of the heat. Lettuce doesn't like to germinate in the heat. But I actually think that most of the reason is we had a very heavy rain right after I planted them, and I think it probably actually washed away most of the seed. So I am going to come through and replant some lettuce seed here, and I think what I'm going to do is pull out this lettuce. I need to decide if I want to let any flower and go to seed to save seeds. I don't think I'm going to do that this year. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this lettuce out and replant. It is a little warm right now to plant lettuce from seed, so I may not be entirely successful if I replant this with all lettuce. I may throw some beans or something else that's a little more heat tolerant in this area as well. But because this spot is shaded by the tomato plants that are on this trellis, I may try planting some more heat tolerant lettuce varieties and see how they do in this space. So we'll see what happens. Now here I have a mixed brassica bed, mostly kale. You can see we've got some cabbage down here. Cauliflowers on the end. I don't know if you can really see. You can see my cauliflower is starting to head up and over across the walkway. This bed is mostly cabbage with some kale mixed in, and some of the cabbages, this one here for example, this is really just about ready to harvest, and I've got some others that are not far behind. So some of these plants in here, like the kale, I'll be able to keep going for quite a while. But the cauliflower will be coming out after I harvest it. The cabbage, I may actually see if I can get a second harvest from some of the cabbage. I probably won't leave it all in. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start some seeds, probably in little pots on my deck or maybe even inside my house. I'm going to start some seeds to be my fall brassicas. I may even hold off on that a little bit. I probably will wait a couple weeks before starting those. And once I pull these plants out, I will enrich the soil. That is an important key when it comes to succession planting, is to remember that the plants that grew here took a lot of nutrients from the soil. And if you want something else to grow there and be successful, you want to replace those nutrients so that the new plants also have some nutrients to pull from. So these 2 beds here, I'll be refreshing the soil as I pull out plants. I will be starting seeds. And then in probably about 6 weeks or so, I will be, depending on when I start the seeds, it might be a little bit longer than that, I will be transplanting out some more brassicas. I'll be starting some more kale, I'll be starting some cabbage, probably some fall broccoli as well. And I'll be strategically planting that in the places where I have pulled these plants out. We have a broccoli bed here, and you can see we have harvested the main head and several side shoots from all these broccoli plants. We do have more side shoots coming, so I'm not going to pull the broccoli out yet, but I do want to be thinking about what I'm going to do with this bed when it does come out. Similarly to the other brassica beds that we talked about, I will plan to start some more broccoli from seed, and if I start it now or start it soon, those transplants won't be ready to go into this bed for probably about 6 weeks or so. And that gives me 6 more weeks to continue harvesting side shoots from all this broccoli. Now, I don't know if it will continue producing side shoots that long, but that way I can keep it in as long as it does. And when it is done, I'll be able to amend the soil, add some fresh nutrients to the soil, and we'll be able to replace it with some plants for fall. So as we head out to my deck, you can see I've got some more sprouting broccoli in this green stalk here. You can see this is really done. Now, it does need to be watered, but compared to the sprouting broccoli, you can see that the peppers I have here look much better. These peppers are heat tolerant plants. Sprouting broccoli is not. We have gotten an abundant harvest from this sprouting broccoli, and you can see there's still little bits of it. So I definitely will harvest what's here before pulling it out, but it's really time to pull this out and replace it with something better for summer. So when it comes to that green stalk there, my tower planter, I have to decide exactly what to do to replace that sprouting broccoli. My ultimate goal for this planter is to fill it with strawberries. So I have a strawberry patch out in my garden, my in-ground garden, and around this time of year, you know, it hasn't really started putting out runners yet, but really soon it's going to be starting to put out runners. And I bought this green stalk with the purpose of taking some of those runners and filling this green stalk with those to have lots of strawberries, because, you know, who doesn't want more strawberries? So that is my ultimate plan, but it's going to be a little while before it's time to plant those. So I think what I'm probably going to do is pull out these sprouting broccolis. I need to replace them with something heat tolerant that is fast enough growing that I can pull it out to make room for the strawberries when it's time. I think what I'm going to do is basil. I do like to keep basil going all season long, because I find that, I should say fresh basil going all season long, because I find that basil will only go so long before it starts to bolt, and when it bolts, the flavor changes and it stops producing as many leaves. So because of that, I do like to keep fresh basil going. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to pull these sprouting broccolis out, replace them with basil, and then when it's time for strawberries to go in, we'll harvest all the basil and replace it with strawberries. So while we're here, let's take a look at these tomato suckers. Oh yeah, look at those roots. So these are ready to go out. They're not quite ready to go out yet, but they will be really soon. So those will be going out soon. So thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for joining me on this casual little garden walk while we had a little chat about succession sowing. I know this wasn't a comprehensive how-to video. I just wanted to share with you guys my plans for, you know, this part of the garden season. This time of year can be a little bit tricky of a transition in the garden because, you know, a lot of the summer stuff, at least here in Connecticut, a lot of the summer stuff isn't in its full swing yet. You know, my tomato plants and my pepper plants have lots of green fruit, but we haven't been harvesting very many tomatoes or peppers yet. I did just harvest my first couple cherry tomatoes, which is very exciting. But, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we're really still getting into the swing of summer with, but there are some of the spring plants are really on the way out, and it's not quite time to plant fall plants yet. So in that little bit of a transition time, that's where I want to make the most of the space with succession planting. So let me know any succession planting strategies that you like to use, also your favorite plants for succession planting. I hope you're having a great day, and I can't wait to see you soon. I'll see you next time.